Hey guys, Rudy here. I want to talk about something strange. Maybe it's a little strange, unorthodox. Maybe not even unorthodox. And I mean unorthodox as in like the Christian perspective or whatever. You know, I consider myself a non-secular Christian or an unorthodox Christian. I don't go to church. I don't really read the Bible. I don't mind reading the Bible. I'll pick it up if I feel like it. But 99% of the time, if I got free time, it's not going to be spent picking up the Bible. Because I have a very, very, very firm belief that the Word, quote unquote, God's Word is written in our hearts. And the Bible is just like a manifestation of human unconsciousness, if that makes sense. And it might not make sense to some of you, but that's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm speaking in tongues. So what it means to me to be an Orthodox Christian who doesn't go to church or doesn't read the Bible, I tend to let life be a teacher, like my own experiences in the past, from what I remember, and the experiences of the present. Human psychology, the way people act, what they show on the outside is a wonderful teacher, and what's going on inside. Because what you see on the outside and others, what's going on with them is what's going on with me. And it's what's going on with you. Anytime somebody makes you angry or upset or sad, it's a direct reflection of your ideals, your ideology. It's a hint of what you truly are. Like, for instance, if someone makes you upset, you have to question yourself, why does this make me upset? Don't just go along with the emotions, because emotions are evil. They're not. Nothing good comes out of emotion, happy or sad, because the good emotions are just a setup to bring you down. You know, you're floating on cloud 9. Next thing you know, you're depressed, and a lot of times that happens with people where they're having a good time, they're having a good day, and just something happens. Either somebody says the wrong thing, or just anything like that. Everybody's been there. It's inescapable. Oh, this dude's really on my ass. Jesus Christ. Anyway, to get back to the topic at hand. A lot of Christians tend to go along with the mess, as in, you know, the whole trans thing. You'll see a lot of churches now waving the rainbow flag and waving the trans flag or whatever it is, and just go along with the nastiness because they heard from a preacher that you're supposed to invite all people. You're supposed to don't judge anyone, right? But he never said to not discern. You can have discernment. And I'm not saying to not interact with people like that, homosexuals, you know, trans people, the people that got caught up in the mess, they got caught up in the material possession. The kind of people who get hung up on labels. And I found a girl who was kind of doing a whole lot of Bible thumping on YouTube, and she brought up the trans people, and she brought up the homosexuals, but she never got into it as to why or the how of not necessarily converting them to a Christian, because I don't believe in that. I'm not out to convert anybody, but I do feel like my channel is a hyper focus on getting over the trauma, which leads people to worship the wrong things. like the labels, for instance. Labels like depression, anxiety, homosexuality, transgenderism, alcoholism. The pot smoking, the mushroom taking tends to be the identity of a lot of people, and they cling to it because they're looking for a father. They've never had a father. Their parents were trash. And that's the case for many, 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 many people. That's the case for many people. But that's the case for a lot of people. So even the Christians will attach to these labels. I see a lot of Christians now and a lot of preachers talking about depression and anxiety and mental health. And mental health is just an illusion. Because you're supposed to be living in the present, not having anxiety about the future or anger about the past. Like, those things don't exist. They all exist in the mind, which is the abyss. Like, the thoughts in the mind are the rabbit hole you fall into when you start believing the thoughts. And it's okay to have the thoughts, but the point is to let them pass. At any rate, I was expecting, it was my fault for expecting this out of her. She just really wanted to read her poetry and quote the Bible. So it's not on her, it's not her fault. I wasted my time listening to her, essentially. And I was wondering, and I made a comment just because I'm truly curious, and I hope she answers back. I'm just truly curious to know if she's afraid to not call out, but if she's afraid to talk to the transgender people or the homosexuals about their trauma. Because I'm going to give you a very good example of how me personally, I'm unafraid. Within reason, right? Because I don't want to be assaulted, and I'm not going to get in people's faces about what they may or may not be going through. I like to have a dialogue with people, and I'll give you a good example. When I first met Karina, she identified with a lot of things. And just to preface this, Karina is okay with me talking about this. Alright? Because I asked her personally, she said it's fine. And we've been working together for 2 years as well. So, she's told me a lot of stories about herself. And she's a fascinating case. So, when we first started working together, I've told this story before, we started talking about her time in Mexico, why she's in America, and blah, blah, blah. And I was just curious. And she let it all out. Like, she was like a waterfall. Just bursting with her story and her trauma and how her father did what he did, which was shortly after she was born, her father moved to America to try to start a new life so that she can bring all them over, get them out of Mexico, get him out of his wife's parents' house, for one thing, and doing the thing that he thought he needed to do to make sure his daughter was raised properly. And that didn't happen. Karina's mother wanted nothing to do with that life, so she stayed in Mexico, lived off her parents until the day they died, and it's history. So she used to say really nasty things about her father, which none of it made sense to me, because I just get a vibe on people when they start spouting off things about their past, when they had that anger built up. I just know they're being fed lies in some way, and I wasn't 100% sure. I was maybe like 90% sure. So she talked about how she got into the lesbian thing and all of that. She identified as a lesbian. Notice I use past tense. So she identified as that. She clung onto that label, which I was fine with that. I don't really care. Like, I see people as people, and I had an understanding back then, as I do now, that these labels that people attach to are just the shit we get into, the mess we get into. Like, covered in caca, covered in the poop, and I'm covered in poop too. I still have my issues that I'm slowly overcoming, and I knew this from my own experience, because after I forgave my parents, I started dropping all these vices, like out of nowhere. It's not like anyone told me I was going to start dropping vices. They just happened. And the biggest one, just to get a little personal, the biggest vice I dropped was was drawing. And I know that sounds like a really strange thing, but the reason I dropped the art and I dropped the drawing after 8 years of studying is because I realized that I made it my identity. And I still, like, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. I don't regret it. I still enjoy drawing. I just don't do it as much as I used to. And I was doing it in the wrong spirit, to put it that way, because I was clinging on to these online personas and these online identities that I was taking on as an artist with the following. I had maybe like 700, 800 followers on Twitter. And I kind of just abandoned all that. Because once I forgave my mother, it wasn't instant, by the way. So the very last person I forgave was my mother. And once that happened, I had a really, really hard time identifying with anything else. Like my friends, and I still consider them friends. There's no hard feelings. I talk to them every now and then. I left a lot of Discord chats because I just couldn't deal with the gossiping and the crap anymore. Because I tried to talk to people about these things and they don't care. And that's the appropriate response. Like they don't care, they're not supposed to care. So I noticed these things about myself, and with Karina, all I said to her was, look, I don't know if what you're saying is true or not. I essentially said, if your father's still alive, you need to go to him and ask him what happened. And that's all I said. I said, don't go to your mom, don't ask your brother, don't use secondhand knowledge in this situation. And I don't remember the exact words I used. I may have said something along the lines of, your story isn't really making sense to me. You need to go to your father and ask him. That way you'll know for sure. And of course, the appropriate response was for her to be angry at me. And to be honest, I didn't know she was angry at me until maybe like, probably like a few months ago when we were talking about it. And it was so funny to me. I just laughed because I knew, I really knew. I knew she was mad at me because she left my shift for a while, the overnight shift, and got onto the day shift. And she was telling me about the story a while ago. She said it was the beginning of our work week, because we work 7 days in a row. It was the beginning of the work week. We had that conversation after working together. And like by the third day, we had that conversation where I said, you need to go to your father and ask him. And by the way, none of this was a pretense of the lesbian thing or any kind of religious pretext or pretense or anything like that. What I was telling her, I didn't mention God. I didn't mention the homosexuality. I didn't mention anything like that. All I said was, you need to go to your father, ask him, and get it from his mouth. And I didn't expect her to do it, but she did it. I don't know the time frame, but all I know is close to Christmas when she did it. She admitted to me recently that it was kind of a cowardly way she did it, which I don't blame her, because I did it that way too. I forgave my mother a few weeks or like a month before she was going to have surgery. So that was a very cowardly way I did it, because I figured I need to do it now or never. So she did it the way she did, but she was very glad she did it. She did it over the phone like I did. Got the message from her father himself that everything she was told was a lie, and that her whole entire life was suffering because of those lies. From her mother and her aunts, her mother's sisters. That whole side of the family lied to her, even her brothers, well, except for one brother, that she approached about it and got a little more insight. But she came to realize all these things. Excuse me. She came to realize all these things, and that I was right. The story didn't make sense because it wasn't true. And after that, she got back on my shift. We got along just fine. And I let it go. Like when I told her she needs to talk to her father, I just let it go. I just left it at that. Meanwhile, she's seething. She's very angry with me. She got off my shift for a little while, and she realized she didn't want to be in the day shift because there's some nasty bitches that work in the day shift. And she figured out really quick that the entire reason I'm not on the day shift because there's too much drama and too many people and too much bullshit to deal with. So she got back on my shift, and some months go by. She forgave her father, and then she told me about it. And she was like, I was happy. Like, it's amazing to hear something like that. And it wasn't like I never said anything like I told you so. And even then, I didn't mention the lesbian thing. I didn't say you're going to start dropping vices and blah, blah, blah. I didn't say anything like that. I just said I'm really happy. I just said I'm very happy that you're reunited with your father and you're talking to him again. And she feels whole again. So it's like a miracle. So, I don't know, maybe a year went by. And I don't really remember exactly the conversation, but she says something to the effect that she feels like she doesn't identify with being a lesbian anymore because she just sees it as almost like she sees it for the label that it was. She understands why she turned to homosexuality in order to try to find an identity, try to find a new God. Because she started realizing, these are her words, not mine, she started realizing that through her lack of a father figure, she was disconnected from God, and that disconnection led her to fill her life to fill the void with labels and other things, with people, with phony romance and phony love and the sex and all of that. And that's what happens when you overcome your parents. Like when you go back to the Father, when you go back to Him with a capital H, when you're reunited with God, that's what happens. He starts revealing to you, become an empty vessel. Like I said in a previous video, you become an empty vessel for God's knowledge. You know, the knowledge of your ancestors and the knowledge of good and evil. And every single moment of your life becomes a lesson. And it's just so crazy to me. So anyway, this lady, and I just asked her in a comment if she's ever afraid, and in the comment I left a message. I told my story of how I overcame, and the realization that all these things we identify with are lies, are just lies of the thoughts, like the abyss. I don't know, guys, I just wanted to get that off my chest. I've been meaning to tell that story for a while, and like I said, Karina's probably listening, and she's okay with me talking about these things. I got her permission. She's just a very interesting story. Because like I said, I didn't come at her with the pretense. I didn't have an agenda when I came at her with the whole father thing. And I think that's the problem with a lot of Christians, is that they have an agenda. I don't know to what extent, because it's hard not to have an agenda, right? So I'm not sure to what extent that I have an agenda. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. But I was just pointing out a big hole in her story. But I was just pointing out a giant hole in her story, and that was it. I just left it at that. And then the pieces just fell into place. I knew it. Like, I knew it was going to happen. So when she told me that she was dropping all these vices and that she felt as if she didn't identify with the homosexuality anymore, I wasn't shocked. And I told her, I was like, look, I knew this was going to happen, but I didn't want to, how do I put it? Like, I didn't want to taint it. I didn't want to be one of those fucking annoying Christian assholes who say things like that. Because it ruins the whole experience. It ruins the whole getting over your parents and all that. It's just the reality of it. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say, guys. Thank you so much for your time if you stuck around this long. I know it's kind of a long story. Thank you and have a good morning. Bye-bye.